Welcome back. So the Foundation for Human Rights has welcomed the National Prosecuting Authority's decision to finally release the Ntsebeza Report looking into the delays in prosecuting apartheid-era cases. Advocate Gina Ntsebeza SC found that there's been ongoing political interference in the NPA's Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The report recommends that an independent commission should be set up to look into the extent of political interference between 2003 and 2017. But for more on this, we are joined now by Gina Synman, who's an in-house counsel at the Foundation for Human Rights. Gina, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I wonder if we have this discussion enough in South Africa, or if it certainly is one of those that we have really swept under the carpet, in your view.
Good morning, Naledi. It's a really important question that you raised, because I don't know that the finalization of the TRC process is discussed in sufficient detail in the South African context of what it means of where we are now 30 years into democracy, and of the work that after the TRC's completion was handed over to the National Prosecuting Authority and also to the SAPS for investigation, where that went for completion of those matters in respect of all the people that either never applied for amnesty or were never granted amnesty by the TRC.
You know, again, for those that really want to see justice, and I can, name so many, the family of the Craddock Four, for instance, Neil Aggart's family, Ahmed Timel's family, goodness, the list goes on and on and on, and you know all about them. For them, they really just want to see justice, right? They want to see justice take place. But there's a sense that we have process after process, and that, that we're then building another process on top of it, right? So you've got, in 2019, the Rodriguez judgment that found that there was political interference in the work of TRC prosecutors within the NPA between 2003 and 2017. Now the suggestion by Gina Synman is that we need another commission. Is that sufficient?
So the recognition by the Supreme Court of Appeal and the High Court in the Rodriguez matter that there had been political interference within the NPA between the periods of at least 2003 until 2017 isn't limited to just the National Prosecuting Authority. We know that there was high-level interference from the executive, high post officers and other appointed officials that had led to this interference being able to continue for this period, that had effectively quashed all investigations and prosecutions into the several hundred matters that the TRC had handed over to the NPA at the completion of the TRC process. And the question that you raise is, what will another commission of inquiry do? Do we have fatigue of commission of inquiries in this country? The position that the Foundation for Human Rights has taken, as well as a lot of the families that have been so deeply impacted by this political interference, where they haven't, as you said, seen justice done in coming to any kind of conclusion or understanding what happened in relation to their own family members or whose lives were lost, that this matter is not complete until we understand what happened, that there was this political oppression that was able to happen, that happened within the NPA as well as SAPS. There is a block over rule of law and accountability that this could happen, that it could happen again, and that it's continually happened because whoever permitted and was involved in ensuring that quashing of all TRC matters has been able to get away with it. And we don't know, there is recognition that it did happen. That has been recognized by the court. It's been stated by the NPA in justification for the delays in prosecuting the perpetrators in the Ahmed Timel matter. But we don't know who was behind the intention for the suppression of these matters or what their motives were. And that is important for South African history, for the context, and also for accountability still of what happened and who those role players were.
Yeah, in the meantime, and I really can't agree with you more, that South Africans would need to know why there was political interference in the prosecuting of apartheid crimes. That's just as important. And in fact, I look at Ntsebeza's report, and one of the things that it says, this is around page 22, I think it says, to date, no person has been charged domestically with the crime of apartheid. It goes further to say, we note that and he quotes another judgment, the Glenister judgment, the Concord consider it part of international law considered it important to use international law in the context of South African law to prosecute apartheid laws. We haven't actually seen that happening, though, and I'm talking about using that particular term in a court of law, the apartheid crime.
There is one matter, and it is the first in South Africa, and of course is historic for this very reason, where the charges of the crime against humanity of apartheid and the crime against humanity of murder under international law have been levied against two of the accused. And that is in the matter of the COSAS 4, activists from COSAS 4 who were lured to an abandoned mine, and three of them were murdered in the explosion and one survived. This is also another matter which is only now finally being prosecuted approximately 20 years after the murders occurred. And it is one that is slowly now eventually working its way through the courts. Those accused have been charged with international crimes against humanity of apartheid and murder. But the trial is yet to start. It has also been beset by delays and postponements, and it has taken a very long time to get off the ground. And there is, of course, the ongoing concern with all of these matters that have yet to have any criminal accountability, that perpetrators and witnesses continue dying, and it makes these matters even harder to ever prosecute. Yeah,
that's the reality. The alleged prosecutors in the Ahmed Timo case, in the case of the Craddock 4, those perpetrators are dead. And that's the reality. And so the question then becomes, where do the families of those individuals then go for justice? But let's then talk about the timeframes that we need to be seeing here, right? This and the process that even comes with setting up a commission of inquiry to look into what happened to the TRC component within the NPA.
So this is a call that has been made both by victims, families of victims and survivors of gross human rights violations of apartheid, and also by civil society. And it's a call that's been made for the last few years to the presidency to set up a commission of inquiry into what happened in this interference within the NPA. And we know that the interference wasn't limited to the NPA, as I've mentioned, that it's demonstrably applicable to higher echelons of government and including the SAPs.
Yeah.
So these calls have been made for a few years already. And so this is why in particular it is so welcoming that the independent report from the investigations that were done by Advocate Ntsebeza SC have also made these recommendations for calling for this commission of inquiry, that it shouldn't be limited to an analysis of the MPA's workings now, the TLC component that it has recently established in the last few years to move TLC matters forward.
Yeah.
It needs to be a broader commission of inquiry, and we welcome that this has been a recommendation of this report as well. Where this goes from now will depend on the decision that the president makes of whether to establish such a commission of inquiry.
Right.
It's this is the ongoing call that we continue making for him to do so, for this to be taken really seriously, and for us to uncover as a country what went wrong. Why could the TLC process not reach its conclusion by having this very important and necessary finality of everyone who wasn't amnestied still receiving the full strength of the law and having a complete, thorough investigation and prosecution and accountability.
You know, towards the end of 2023, we heard the question being asked in Parliament as well around resources that are necessary to, that have to be poured into the National Prosecuting Authority. And now we're assessing what one component of the NPA did, where the TRC investigations and prosecutions need to be taking place. Do they have enough resources? I mean, the report says 40 dedicated investigative officers, 28 dedicated TRC prosecutors. Can we even have a discussion around pouring more resources into that component?
It is something that remains to be seen, of whether the resources that have been allocated in the last few years or most recently are sufficient to finalize these matters. We understand also from submissions made to the Portfolio Committee for Justice that there are approximately 130 odd matters that the TRC component is looking into, We also know that these are referred to as an annexure in the Ntsebeza Report. We don't know which of these matters are the ones that the MPA is investigating. The MPA has decided not to release this list. We're of the view that it ought not to be a confidential list, that it ought to be in the public, that it is in the public interest, that these 130 odd matters are also made available to the public. There are at least two reasons for this. One is that they are a matter of public record. They result from the hearings before the TRC of the several hundred matters that the TRC handed over to the MPA at the conclusion of the process.
Right.
And so it was a matter of public record what those matters were, of who came forward and
right.
who applied or applied for amnesty at that time. But it is also could be really useful in assisting the MPA in moving these matters forward, because were this list made public, members of the public that may have more information that didn't come forward at the time of TRC hearings for various reasons, that may still have some leads that could assist with investigating these matters.
Leading to prosecution, right. Gina, unfortunately, I am out of time, and I do need to step in, and I think this has been a very enriching conversation. We certainly will be watching just the process of what happens next with the recommendations by Ntsebeza, and certainly the calls by the Foundation for Human Rights as well. We do appreciate your time, Gina Synman, an in-house counsel at the Foundation.